Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm good. I, once again, am late to the show. It's my fault. I apologize. But I will say we had a really fun show away from the show going on with a little bit of chit chat, the pregame to the show that we had going on. That was fun. And I just got educated on how great Vernon Maxwell is on social media. So I'm doing good.
Oh, he's spectacular. Of course,
unless you're in Utah.
No, that's true. Joining us as well is Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. And now my dog is barking. What's up, Brenden? How are you?
You were yelling in your house.
Doing well. Nothing too crazy. Like Sean said, some good conversation before we got in here. He's getting educated on Vernon Maxwell's social media game, and I'm getting educated on unclothed women on planes. So,
wow,
an interesting pre-show. You know,
on International Women's Day.
On International Women's Day. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us. If you don't mind, hit the thumbs up button for us. That would help us. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I think you need to be subscribed to jump into the chat. And I'm trying to get someone to help with the dogs. So,
well, I think your dog is triggered every time you scream Brenden Nunes. So, when Brenden ever steps foot in your palatial estate up in them hills close to Nevada, you have to introduce your dog to Brenden in that very way.
Okay, well, 2 dogs like Brenden. 1 dog doesn't like anybody. So, it's
Great.
just the way it goes.
I'll take that.
Yeah, the corgi doesn't like anybody. She hides most of the time, and then she still attacks the golden. The other 2 are super friendly with everyone. Okay, let's dive into this. We had a crazy night at Golden One Center last night. It was, of course, the return of De'Aaron Fox. There was a lot of concern, I think, from fans coming into the night or from people out in the Sacramento stratosphere that De'Aaron Fox would be booed loudly. There were times where he was. Anytime he touched the ball, I think fans did what they've done in the past for, say, Buddy Hield. Nothing over the top, and still probably a small percentage of fans, but in a giant building, you can still hear it. But overall, let's just dive in. What did you guys think of the fan reaction to De'Aaron Fox last night? Whether it was during warmups when they announced him as a starting guard for the San Antonio Spurs, or it was when they did the tribute video. What were you guys' kind of thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was, like you said, just a good night overall. I mean, I think it was understandable feelings from the fans, no matter what side you were on with that stuff. And, gets his cheers during the tribute video, which I thought was well put together by the Kings. And then, like you said, I mean, I thought Doug or Jerry Reynolds was on our station that day before, and talked about how, I'll cheer him before the game, but the second the ball goes up, he's on the other team. And I thought that was essentially sort of how it was handled for the most part by the fan base. Not the greatest game from De'Aaron. I think that it would have been more fun if he had a little bit more of an electric night on his end, but Spurs have not been doing the greatest. And, in a sort of poetic way, you have Zach LaVine reminding everybody like, hey, I'm pretty good at this, and there's a reason that they traded for me. And he drops, what he end up with, 36 points, 7 of 11 from 3 as well. So De'Aaron, obviously the highlight of the night, but it's kind of a cool moment since you're moving on to Zach LaVine, and for him to have a big game in that circumstances.
Yeah, he's definitely the best player on the court. Sean, where are you at with all this?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Sacramento was as classy as I thought they'd be. I think the fans did it. They recognized the moment. Certainly, I think the people who were on a mission to boo the hell out of him and did that, good for them. They spent their hard-earned money and went and did that. And I think they got their message across. And I think in talking to Fox both before and after the game, I don't think he was necessarily bothered by it. I really liked his expression when during the player intro, because it started out like the boos were really loud, and then the cheers tried to drown him out. And you kind of saw on his face, and I think you can kind of see it on the video I took, where he's just kind of he's looking at his teammates, and his teammates are giving him a hard time, obviously, and he just kind of looks at it and goes, no, half. like you can kind of read his lips and what he was saying. But I think they handled it the right way. I like that there was the tribute video, got it done with quick. You paid respects to a guy that had played 7.5 seasons, and despite maybe a lack of success and maybe it didn't finish the way everyone wanted it to, I'd say fans, media, organization, and even De'Aaron Fox and his family included in that. I think that's the one thing I think everyone can agree on. You give him his flowers, you pay the respects, and that's what makes kind of this small market of Sacramento unique. I mean, this fan base absolutely adores its players. They have a select few that they boo the hell out of and have grudges against, and but in the end, I mean, that's what kind of makes this place unique. And I think the reputation of Sacramento and its fans around the league, this is why I think it's such a special place. And I think had that gone a different way, I think it would have started the kind of the unraveling of that pristine reputation of that this market and this fan base has. So I really liked it. I was on the radio earlier that day, and I was, we were all kind of like, oh, what will the ovation be like? And I said, there's been plenty of players that have had these unceremonious exits from Sacramento. The biggest one, in my opinion, is Mitch Richmond, and he's got his jersey in the rafters and he's still celebrated. But make no mistake, I mean, granted, there was no social media at the time, but that guy had a reputation of quitting on the team and demanding a trade, and the contract stuff got nasty in the end. And so for all the old Kings fans that remember Mitch Richmond, it didn't end well. But yet the many All-Stars, the All-Star MVP, the one playoff appearance, that was he was the second best two guard in the league next to Michael Jordan. So there is those paid respects there. And he also, much like Isaiah Thomas, showed up to city council meetings and represented the Kings the right way off the court. And he was the poster child for being this phenomenal superstar talent that was just wasted away in Sacramento during some pretty bad years. So long story short, I like the way it happened. And I think, I don't tell people how to fan at all. That's up to each individual, but I think everybody left that night probably pretty happy, unless you were just rooting for the Spurs and hoping that De'Aaron would have some incredible performance. And talking to him even after the game, I'd asked him about if maybe this was kind of too much, to deal with, because we saw what he did pregame and how accessible he was to both fans and former teammates and coaches and people around and everything. I mean, that definitely upset the typical player routine that he goes through. And he went out there and kind of played pretty terribly. And his kind of smart aleck retort back to me was, I haven't hit a shot in 2 weeks. And
he hasn't.
Yeah, I guess it's true. I hadn't watched a ton of what the Spurs have been doing over the past couple of weeks, but so they've got some things to figure out. It kind of makes you wonder what the rest of the season looks like. Certainly he made the comment that he's going to go to LA and he's going to meet with a hand specialist, and maybe there's a decision that's going to come here in the next coming day, maybe weeks ahead, about what the rest of his season looks like. But all in all, I think last night was a ton of fun, and that Friday crowd was great. Sold out building.
Yeah, he's shooting 24.4% in his 14 games from three, in his 14 games with the Spurs on 5.6 attempts per game. He's been a bit of a train wreck with his shooting. So there was no lie there at all. Okay, so I thought, like, when we got to like the starting lineups, I thought that there were some boos, but then they were overwhelmed by the cheering. I think when we got to the tribute, that if you weren't in the building, you wouldn't know, but he got a standing ovation. Like, most of the crowd stood up and were cheering. There were some boos, but they were totally drowned out by cheers after the video was done. And then once the game played, I am all there for fans doing what they want to do, and they booed him every time he touched the ball. I thought that was great too. So for me, like, I thought it was an interesting night. De'Aaron stayed on the court forever in pregame. He went over and signed autographs for fans during
Well, James was talking about De'Aaron signing a ton. He did. He signed a ton of autographs. I mean,
He did.
in fairness, he goes into on his way to the home locker room, and Brenden, you've seen this. He goes in and he signs for everybody along the tunnel, much like Steph Curry. And this time it was just at a different tunnel. But James is back.
I'm back. Yeah, I thought it was funny too. He brought up that he had never been to the other locker room. He'd never really been on that side of the arena. Yeah, interesting stuff. I thought it was cool to go over and say hello to him. When players come through, former Kings come through. I know I usually go over. Sean usually says hello to people. When Harrison Barnes came through earlier in the season, it was like, hey, what's up, man? And again, you pay your respects for them being pros with us as media members over the course of their careers. And I thought Fox was, he was kind of in his element. He had a smile on his face the whole night. I don't think that it was a bad experience for him, even if he did hear some boos. So lots of good memories here in Sacramento. That team's going the wrong way. That Spurs
Are they though?
Team. Well, probably not. You're probably right, Sean.
Still got Wemby sitting there, which I thought it was cool that Wemby made the trip reportedly to kind of be there for De'Aaron when he hasn't been traveling with the team much as all his health stuff has been going on, but he wanted to make sure to be out there for De'Aaron's return.
Interesting. I missed that.
Yeah, you did. You just got booted from the chat.
Missing a lot. That seems like just switched over to the hotspot right there.
Yeah, for the audio listener, James not only has frozen, but has now disappeared. So it's going to be Brenden and I for a split second. I don't like our YouTube layout, but bear with us. We'll get that out there. There's James. He's back.
We're having
Go ahead,
all
James.
kinds of issues today.
Saturday, fun day.
Yeah, that was just totally bizarre. It kicked everybody out. Yeah.
No, just you.
Well, but on my end, it did kick everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when I came back in, it was like, oh, look at that. Everyone's gone. You guys were on timeout. Weird. Sorry if we're having technical difficulties today during the live stream.
Canadian story.
Yeah. So, but overall, that, Sean, I that team is going the wrong way. You're probably right. They're not going the wrong way. I mean, Cooper Flagg is a incredible talent. And if you can have 2 top 10, lottery chances going into lottery night, then, that's better than having 1 or 0. And so you might as well. They also have the Atlanta Hawks unprotected pick, and they're just watching Atlanta fall apart and, loving every minute of it. So,
and you know what? This is a way to don't be surprised if, I think they're the favorites to get Kevin Durant this offseason. I feel like that happens. But my goodness, whether that happens or not, they just have so much flexibility, and I think they're going to be incredible. I really think that they're just going to be a team to have to really battle with for the next probably decade. A better part of a decade at least. We'll see what happens.
Even if it's not KD, they have, which I agree with you, that makes a lot of sense, but they have assets to be competitive in any of these trade conversations, really. And when you already have Wembanyama there, you already have De'Aaron, and then some of these other, like Stephon Castle, if he's included in some of these deals, but if not, he's a great piece, probably favorite for Rookie of the Year right now. They have a bright future, but maybe end of this season, it's a pretty bleak outlook.
I thought it was funny too, seeing the way he was introed. They went Harrison Barnes and, Golden One Center erupted for HB. And obviously he had already had his return back earlier this season. And so they paid him his respects. They go Chris Paul, who gets universally booed in any arena he's at, and rightfully so. And then it was Fox. So I thought it would have been a real stark contrast. I think they should have go Chris Paul first, then go HB, then go Fox, and then we could really hear the separation of the ovations.
No, I agree with you. Either way, I thought it was an interesting night. And, I think what made the night maybe a little more intriguing was just the way that the articles, anytime, a player returns to his former team or anytime there's some sort of controversy, you're going to get the articles rolling out from, ESPN had sort of De'Aaron Fox's take on the entire situation. Which again, it was a little bit regurgitated information from what we've heard for the last, couple of months, or the last couple of weeks, whatever it is at this point. And then
Which one, on the ESPN one?
yeah, the ESPN, I had a lot of the takes that we've all heard from De'Aaron, whether it's, from him directly or indirectly or through another article or so.
But this one was in print. Like this one, he spoke a little bit more direct and on record about. And I thought that was, I think, what we were all hoping to get at various points, even in speaking to him, behind the scenes. And even some of the things he did in his press conference, in his introductory press conference and first media sessions, I thought Michael C. Wright of ESPN did a brilliant job of being able to get him finally and capture the moment before he comes to Sacramento. And I think for De'Aaron, it felt like he'll use that opportunity to kind of close the book on some of the tough feelings and maybe what had happened behind the scenes.
Yeah. And look, everyone should read those two articles. Like that would be my advice. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to fan, but if you want to be informed on the situation, I thought Fox was honest and was, again, he's not the only one that is feeling the way that he felt about the team's direction. He's also he had a differing opinion on whether Mike Brown should be back than some of his teammates. And just so people know, those are big name teammates. They're not like the back of the rotation guys. They're, from what I've heard, that there's been some, there were people that were not enamored with Mike Brown and did not want him to get his contract extension this summer. And they're big name players on this roster. And then we get to the article in The Athletic. And of course, so everyone knows, we're all friends with Sam Amick, and for that matter, Anthony Slater. Sam is by far, in my book, like the best postmortem writer that there is in the NBA. Anytime something bad happens and you want to know how it all played out in the end, Sam is usually the guy to go to. And I thought that this was a very, very intriguing and strong piece by Sam that realistically just pulled De'Aaron Fox's name right out of it. And it just speaks about the dysfunction of the Sacramento Kings as an organization and where they're at right now. And none of it, to me, was like, it did not shine a great light on the Kings organization as a whole, whether Fox was included in that article as part of it or not. I don't know, Brenden, what were your thoughts on Amick and Slater's article?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that, I guess pulling back the curtain a little bit, it's kind of an interesting thing to read because we've heard so many things in these coming up weeks. So honestly, I'm kind of sorting through and like trying to remember, okay, what of this was already public, what was not, and in certain aspects.
That's tough, right? Trying to decide what and what has been out there or hasn't.
It's a little weird. It's a little weird for sure. But I think the Domas thing is maybe one of the bigger things they said in there, paraphrasing, but essentially saying that Domas also has questions about the direction of this franchise and the way that everything's being handled, and that may be a conversation this offseason. I'll say that's something that I had heard leading up to or prior to that as well. And yeah, I've also seen people online. I was a little surprised the reception to that article. I think there's some people that have already decided it's screw De'Aaron. I'm riding with the front off with the org no matter what. And I think that obviously as a fan, you're going to ride with the team, but I think that's different than riding with specific people that may work for the team. And just essentially I saw people being like, oh, they felt like Sam was irresponsible with some ways he connected things. And I'll just say that, like you said, James, Sam is phenomenal at this. And he's not just connecting two things for whatever reason. Like, people read between the lines with some of these certain things. And I think that you can kind of gauge what's going on. But essentially, I mean, yeah, it's good to get that transparency out there that there's a lot of, I guess, chaos behind the scenes in just messiness that maybe the organization tends to go about things. And for Domas to be somebody that has some questions about that after it felt like they kind of picked him at this deadline over De'Aaron in a way. I don't think it's a secret that he was one of those guys that wasn't the biggest Mike Brown fan. And then obviously he's a big Doug Christie guy. That was the coach that was assigned to him, working with him in the off seasons, going out to Lithuania and things like that. And then he gets the head coaching spot. I think it kind of just speaks to what these guys are all seeing with some of the behind the scenes stuff with the organization, which is, I'll say where a lot of my questions and concerns come from for what the future of this team looks like, and kind of why I've been, I would say, a little bit more pessimistic ever since really, I would say, the Brown firing. And so, yeah, I mean, not the most jaw-dropping news or anything like that. I don't think it's necessarily surprising a bunch of people, but I think you have to be a little bit concerned when there's a bunch of reporting about various players around the league and currently guys, and including guys that are currently on your roster, having questions about the way that everything is handled with the org.
Yeah, I would agree. Like going through, I mean, there were some things out there that whether you knew or not, I mean, I don't think the general public knew. I don't think the general public knew that, that Anjali is such a prominent person in the organization, or that, again, during his time around the team, that the same thing could be said about Jeremy Lamb. I think that there are some things in there that, like, the roadmap is there for like confusion and chaos. And again, the Domas thing is, I think, the biggest part of everything that shows up. It's like, hey, you still have a lot of work to do, and you got to show people that, what direction you are going and who's going to be part of this franchise moving forward. I see a lot of things in the chat going on right now, and, we're always up for listening to the people in the chat and throwing things out, whatever. And I would just say, like, look, this is a much more complex story than anyone can,
Yeah. Buckle up.
Yeah, because we're not done.
For real.
Yeah, right. We're not done. We're not.
Well,
not
no,
done
I
at
mean,
all.
look, one of the things that I think that Sam Amick did such a great job of in that piece is a very clear chronological order of how kind of things transpired. And look, I don't want to be the guy that, didn't shine a light on some things and say, oh yeah, we knew that. But there's a lot of information that is kind of been around for a while. And I think what's difficult for someone, at least like me, who does, local TV news, is it's hard to get people to go on record and talk about these things. And without that, it makes it very difficult. And so you also have to sometimes question some people's motivations as to when and why they choose to speak out about certain things. And so navigating those waters is very difficult. And I can tell you that that article that came out in The Athletic, it was a long piece that had been in the works for a very, very long time. And
Yes.
it ain't over. That's why I say buckle up. And as an aside to that, two things. One, this offseason is going to be, the minute the Kings stop playing basketball later in 2025, maybe here in about a month or so, maybe a little more than that, depending on how the postseason goes, things are going to get a little more interesting. Like this is going to be juicy. There's going to be things that you're going to like. You're going to be things that you won't like, depending upon how you feel about members within this organization, players on this team, coaches within the organization. Yeah, it'll get a little hairy, and unfortunately it's what Sacramento is known for. It's what the Kings are known for. They're called Kings for a reason. There's chaos all around. I mean, whatever little moniker you want to hang on this organization tends to be true. And I think, even if you're a fan, two things can be true. You can be a fan, but you can also know that, yeah, this is kind of a shit show at times. And and that's probably putting it really lightly. The reality of it is it's there. I always like to say it's not unique to Sacramento, because it's not. But what's unique to Sacramento is how long it continues to hang about, and how much transparency is lacking around the organization, and sometimes that gets murkier and more murky. Let's just say that. I don't want to say more murky and murky the longer you kick the can down the road, and more events tend to happen. So yeah, I think both things can be true. The other thing I'll add too is if anyone is sitting back and go, well, that can't be true, or that's not true, or no, they got that wrong. Whether you're a fan within the organization, within the NBA circles, agents, whatever. Typically how it works is if you get something wrong, you as the writer are going to hear about it from people that you have written about. A team, you'll see teams come out and make statements. You'll have maybe someone get ahead of it and say that isn't true, whatever, to basically kick that down. Did you see any of that over the past 24, 48 hours? So just that's why I kind of say point to the lie. Like, where's the lie? And again, I also shift that back to Fox. Like, you can be mad at Fox. I look, I'll be the first one to say De'Aaron Fox hadn't maybe handled things the way most people would. I don't think there's a ton of certainly hindsight's 2020. I don't know that he has any regrets, but if you don't like something he said about the organization, point to the lie. Like, what has he said that isn't true? What's the thing that bothers you the most about him talking about his future, his career? And if you can ask yourself that question, and I'm not trying to say, hey, don't vilify De'Aaron Fox. By all means, if you want to vilify him, vilify him. But I think some of these articles, hearing him speak his truth and have a lot of silence on other ends of the spectrum, is probably one of the things that if I'm looking at it objectively, would give me pause to try to. I was asked the other day by someone within the organization. They said, who do you blame? Who's the bad guy? And then that came up even on the radio, the radio show I did yesterday. And I said, I think I need to have more conversations. I really don't know that I can point to a bad guy. And I'll take that a step further. As it pertains to De'Aaron Fox and being in Sacramento and the trade and all that stuff, like, I don't think there has to be a bad guy. Like, I think it may have just run its course. And I think that, things had gotten so far down a road that ultimately after 7.5, 8 years, maybe you're having buyer's remorse. Maybe you don't like the success of your team. If you're looking at it organizationally, if you're De'Aaron Fox, certainly he has questions, but also the thing that just keeps irritating me is hearing how the organization will say, well, we offered him these extensions and he didn't want to be here. But at the same time, it's like, well, we all kind of understood. Yes, he has concerns about the roster in the future, but he's going for the more money with the possibility of being able to get a supermax. And if he doesn't get that supermax, that extension should still be in hand and still be able to have that should he not get that. And I think somewhere along the way, that's what either the buyer's remorse or not liking where the direction of things are going. And then maybe there's internal discussions with the organization say, well, should we give him that money? And, once you fire the coach, make the decision to trade him, now you're left with this team, and this team who we've all had concerns about, all of a sudden is playing really, really well. So I think winning can help solve a lot of these problems. The closer you get towards the end of the season. And if this thing finishes out the way it's kind of rolling right now, where all of a sudden they're making kind of this neat little run and all of a sudden they're super entertaining and they've been able to show a give a damn on the defensive side and Zach LaVine's playing like an all-star, then maybe a lot of this stuff tends to just go away.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things that you said there. Number one, so people know the article could have been much worse.
Oh yeah.
Just straight up.
That's why I say buckle up.
No,
because
I don't mean like it could have been so much worse as in, if this would have happened or that would have happened. No. What has happened and the way that they reported these stories, they could have used a heavier hand and done like taken the Kings to like the wood chipper, right? So like, again, what Sean says, like, buckle up because this thing could go, like, there's more to every story, right? I'd also say like first of all, Sam and Anthony Slater, they're guys that don't put things out there that are incorrect. And like they did a really good job of showing nuance without just, again, taking a flamethrower to everybody and just burning the thing down. And again, they, I'm pretty sure, have plenty of other information that could help burn this thing entirely down. And so, like, it's a dark story that we're just, like, part of it's been told, but like the whole story may never be told. Maybe it will be. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. You think so? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be it's gonna be an interesting couple of months. Interesting, I don't know, like how long it's gonna take. Go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, an intriguing offseason to kind of navigate for a lot of different reasons. But I think the other standout thing in that article from Amick and Slater is reporting that it was not Monty's decision to let go of Mike Brown, even though he kind of came out himself and said so, that came more from the higher ups. And I think it's just another one of those instances where, everything's not exactly what it seems on the surface, obviously. And it just adds to, I saw somebody in the chat earlier, like, why hire a front office if you're not going to let them make the decisions? And I think that, not that ownership shouldn't be involved at all, because obviously you're the one running the team, you're the one putting your finances to it and all of that. And I don't expect somebody to not have any say. But I do kind of side on, hey, you paid the guys that you trusted to do this job. So let them do the job. And it doesn't always seem that simple, to Sean's point, in many organizations, but specifically here.
Yeah. We had one guy who was making a bunch of statements in the chat, and then he had to leave. And some of this stuff I would have pulled up, and we would have had discussions on, but Sac King, not to have this conversation after you left, because I had no idea you were leaving. But like, you can't grade this trade today. Again, is Zach LaVine playing better than De'Aaron Fox right now? Absolutely. Like, there's no question. Zach LaVine is playing really, really good basketball. That doesn't change the dynamics of the trade. And like the fact that you took on a player who's 3 years older and is owed, $96 million or whatever it is over the next 2 years, and has a long history of injury. Like, Zach LaVine, the player right now, is playing really, really well. And again, offensively, there's never been a problem with Zach LaVine. I thought he would fit in really well here offensively. I actually think he'll fit in better than De'Aaron Fox offensively. That doesn't change the fact that there are other issues that come along with Zach LaVine, and about starting over as a franchise and getting much older when you're starting over, and getting a player with a long history of catastrophic injuries, and who's owed a lot of money. So there are plenty of things that are pluses and minuses with Zach. Actually, he's been better defensively than I thought he would be. He's adjusted better than I thought he would do on that end of the court. He has played extremely well. And like, the way he's playing right now, he gives the Kings an opportunity this season to maybe get up to a 6 seed, maybe more like a 7-8 in the Western Conference, just because of strength of schedule and everything else. And I'd also say, like, those out there that want to trash Mike Brown. Mike Brown's a very, very good coach. He's the coach that stepped in and won 18 more games in the previous season, and snapped a 16-year playoff drought.
Who's
Again,
trashing Mike Brown?
Oh, there are people all in
everybody,
the chat.
Sean.
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know where you're missing that one, Sean.
Sorry, I didn't see that. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, like, look, I think Doug has done a remarkable job of capturing the imagination of the team and turning them around. And then not only that, but fighting through a really, really crazy week where your star player basically is getting traded and you're starting over. And the fact that Doug is 20-11 in his first 31 games, and you count all the stuff that's happened in those 31 games, it's remarkable that he has like a 624 win percentage as a head coach. So really, like, I think where they are today versus where they were, in late December, like, this team is night and day. The roster's totally different. There's all kinds of stuff that we're going to continue to get into. But before we do, we're super excited. We're super excited to partner with Underdog Sports. It's my favorite place to play fantasy games. You got to go check out their Pick'em game. You just pick between 2 and 8 stats from your favorite players and choose whether they will go higher or lower. You can win 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. It's super fun. Use a promo code KINGSBEAT, all one word, KINGSBEAT, to claim your first free pick and a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus credit. Can't wait to see your entries. Go to Underdog, download the app, KingsBeat. Join us today and start playing Underdog. It's super cool. You must be 18 or over and present in a state where Underdog operates. You also, terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Check out Underdog. It's just a really, really good way to enhance your basketball viewing experience, and it's a good time. And I certainly would take more on the points, rebounds, and assists. It doesn't matter what they are, but if you're looking at Nikola Jokic, just take the more every time.
Good idea.
Like what we saw last night was like one of the most remarkable things of all time. But I want to put this in perspective. So he finished with 31 points, 22 assists, and 21 rebounds, right? So what is that? That's 74 total.
Video game.
Yeah, when he played against the Kings, just so you know, his points, rebounds, assist totals were bigger than that. I think it was 77. So that dude is a machine. Whatever he did last night was like, it's the first time in NBA history that a player has gone for 30, 20, 20. Or just absolutely remarkable. So check out Underdog. Good stuff. Check, but again, choose your favorite Kings players, throw them on in there, do more or less, and let the games begin.
One of my favorite things, by the way, that it's new is when you do a live read. It just warms the heart.
Here?
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
It's great. It is
What,
so great.
Because I butcher it?
No, you don't butcher it. It's just different. So it's a different energy, and I love it. It's great.
It's like doing radio stuff.
You okay over there, Brenden?
Brendan's just
I'm like, I don't know how to be comfortable right here, to be honest. So I definitely just moved to sitting on the floor in an effort to trying this.
There's a couch behind you. I think you should just lay down.
I was sitting on the couch, but like if I lean back far, I don't know what to do.
Lean back.
So yeah, we're sitting on the floor.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
You were, I must say, there was a small little gathering of folks that may or may not have went to local establishment last night, and you were asked about a couple times, and kind of called out of your name for not showing up, not being there.
Which, whatever. That's on brand for the people I'm assuming you were hanging out with.
And it wasn't me. It was not me. I was.
Oh yeah, you would never talk shit.
No, we know I do, but but this time it wasn't me. It was not me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You get a new pair of shoes?
Not yet. I think I don't know what's going on there. Good Lord. But we'll talk.
All right, let's get back into this. As far as the gameplay last night and the gameplay over the last couple of weeks, over the last week, what are your guys' thoughts on Valanciunas? Like, to me, like this team has been lacking that presence, but to go out and get a starting level center, again, I wish it would have happened earlier. I wish it would have happened during the offseason. That's no disrespect to Alex Len, but Valanciunas has just been so good for this team. But since Sabonis has been out, and we don't know how long Sabonis is going to be out for, but it was a mild hamstring strain. They're hoping it would be like 7 days, and they would update us. We still haven't got an update, but where are you guys at with Valanciunas?
Well, first off, I want to say I was hearing from multiple people last night that Domas wanted to play.
Oh,
and so I think that's going to be sooner than later. But I mean, hamstrings are so tricky. I think give it the true week. Domas, just calm down, right? Like things are going well, and JV's playing so well. He's a monster. He's cleaning everything up. People, I mean, in the chat talking, JV's a monster. Absolutely, he's been fantastic. He is a starting level center, and it's. I know you said no disrespect to Alex Len. No, the disrespect is to Jonas Valanciunas for even saying Alex Len's name within the same sentence. I mean, it's a night and day comparison of what this man does for this team, and he plays the role of Domas so well. I asked him about it before the game yesterday at shoot around, like the load that you're carrying on a new team. And I love his comment. I mean, the Lithuanian dude just goes, load is load. Like we rest at the end of the season. And I think my favorite moment last night was when he lit the beam, because if anyone heard it it's on the video. He cuts Scott Moak off like, hey man, enough talk. Let's just light the beam. We got things to do. Like, it's so great. The whole arena erupted in laughter. I mean, the guy is just incredible. So a lot of fun to be around. He's having that impact on the floor. Sometimes you get these guys that are a lot of fun to be around and don't impact the game the right way. And, it's like, it's sad because they're there to keep things light and be that glue guy. And you can't put a value on chemistry, but it's high. And this guy is doing all those things, checks a lot of boxes, and remarkable beard.
Yeah.
Remarkable beard.
Remarkable to that point.
Can't do it.
JaVale McGee. JaVale McGee was one of those guys that had a big presence behind the scenes. Tristan Thompson was one of those guys. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing from Valanciunas is not only does he bring this really fun and cool personality, even Iman Shumpert, but he's also really, really good on the court, right? Go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, I think Jay Crowder is one of those guys right now that has an impact in the locker room, but obviously not giving you very much on the court. JV doing both obviously brings a lot. I mean, I think obviously a ideal healthy version of this roster is your backup center, but part of the reason that you bolster that spot is in case something does happen to Domas, that you're not just totally falling off a cliff when you have to go to Alex Len or Isaac Jones on a two-way contract still, very early into his career, and you're seeing some of the growing pains there. So he's been great. I mean, I think that the passing has been even a little bit better than I expected recently as he's filled that Domas role, but casually and efficiently scoring, just finishing plays. Sometimes that's posting up when guys decide to switch onto him, or just getting boards, offensive and defensive, and putting it right back. I mean, he does it so much within the flow of the offense that I think it's actually helped Zach and DeMar and some of these other guys where, Domas was talking about as he's getting adjusted to LaVine. LaVine's the guy that needs the ball in his hands a little bit and kind of catch a rhythm before a shot goes up. And obviously JV being a little bit more off ball than what Domas is, I think has been beneficial for Zach. And he's filled in great. As Sean said, clearly a starting caliber center in this league, and having two of them, especially when one of them is an all NBA guy or borderline at very least like Domas. I mean, it's great to have that sort of depth at a position that impacts the floor a lot. And I'll say defensively is probably where he surprised me the most. He's not a, traditional rim protector in like a wingspan deterring shots sort of way, but he's such a physical presence and he's got so much size to him that I think he makes guys think a little bit more about coming into the paint before you're just going to go in there and bounce off this 7-foot Lithuanian beast down there. So I think defensively he's provided a little bit to this team as well, but they fell off a cliff previously when Domas went to the bench. It was their worst offensive moments. Now, I haven't checked after last game, but their best offensive rating from a player is Jonas Valanciunas so far this season. He's been killer in the minutes that he's been out there.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch him play because he is a deterrent, and not in like the JaVale McGee swatting at everything away up in the air. He's a deterrent because nobody wants to run inside. I have seen that he struggled with the rim runners. That's what we saw in Dallas, where Kai Jones just was all over the place against him, and he also struggles in space out on the perimeter. So Domas is still rated as the best post defender in the NBA from the one thing that I saw today on the interwebs. Domas moves his feet a lot better. He's just quicker out on the perimeter. But having Valanciunas in the middle is a really good thing. Having both of them is just like a spectacular thing because no one wanted to talk about, the potential of this exact scenario that we're in where Domas was going to miss time. It's like, oh, well, he's only going to play 12 to 14 minutes a night. And, I said that a bunch, like, hey, $10 million a year is a lot to spend, especially when you need wing help, when you need depth in other positions. But at the end of the day, they've been able to figure this out and at least get him on the court enough where he's impactful. And then when Domas has been out, he's just been great. So, I mean, over the last 3 games, I think the biggest thing, he's averaging 5 assists a game. And that's not something, I figured he would average 15, 16 points. And I think he's averaging like 11.3 rebounds, something like that. But the other component that he's doing is he's passing the ball really well. And I think that LaVine plays like off of Valanciunas better right now than he does off of Sabonis. And that's more because he's used to that conventional big. He's not used to having the big with the ball in his hands the whole time. And so when they are putting Valanciunas out there, I've watched Valanciunas set screen and then reset the screen, and watching Zach LaVine play off of that has been really, interesting to watch. I think they've got good chemistry already.
Did you catch the little snippet of music that they're going to play for him?
Yeah, what was that?
It's like a Game of Thrones Vikings type of feel, very ominous sound. He seemed to really like it, but it was, if anyone who, if you don't go to the arena or pick up on the broadcast, but every time at home if it's a 3 or a dunk, you usually get obviously the Malik Monk with the Monk chant, or Zach LaVine with the Travis Scott snippet. Like there's always something for specific players.
The Keegan Murray call.
Well, no, but I mean, that's just Scott Moak. We're talking about like recorded music. So like, when Fox had the Jimi Hendrix thing for Foxy, if that was a 3 or a dunk or anything like that. But Domas getting the Jack White or the White Stripes, Seven Nation Army riff. But yeah, he's got this pretty thunderous Viking type of music that's going to come that they kind of introduced during him lighting the beam last night. So I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, he's just an all-around fun dude. Like like the experience we've had with him behind the scenes, like in the locker room and stuff. He's just a super nice guy. Just like super, super chill, very respectful. Like he gave us plenty of time as media members, and then when we wanted to walk away, he comes over and thanks each of us. Like just a genuine good dude. He was there with I think his family was there last night as well. Yeah, and he's like a lot of these guys. They've got like a young family that that are living in a hotel, most likely here in Sacramento, probably living in a suite in the Sawyer. So yeah, it's crazy how these guys have to uproot their lives and kind of start over. I want to jump in on this too. Keon Ellis has got to start the last couple of games, and we've talked about this in the past, but him being like the 6th starter. Man, could there be a more important player to this team? Like he's just been so incredibly good, and watching him, he doesn't have to score 27 like he did in the Dallas game a few weeks back, or even like 15 to be like super impactful. Like he's just stuffing the stat sheet in a crazy way. And I know Brenden, you were super early on the Keon Ellis wagon, but this is a player that the Kings, maybe as much as any player that they have, he's got to be in the lineup as much as possible.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely more important players, but he's been extremely impactful for this team. And what he's doing defensively, I think is ridiculous. That's always been his strength and where he makes his money, really. But I think it's been upped up even more so. Like the deflections are nonstop. The caliber of steals that he's getting, of like reading the defense and being a step ahead and super anticipatory, however you say it.
There we go.
I thought I had it before I started saying it.
Well.
And, he had a rear view contest block last night on De'Aaron that is one of those like, wow, you're a special defender, because the recovery there is ridiculous. And so, I mean, between the physicality that Jonas adds, but then having the disruptiveness of Keon Ellis on the perimeter, Jake Laravia, Keegan Murray, I think has stepped up his defense as of late as well. And so Keon, I think, is an important cog in this whole improved defense that we've seen from this group. And they've got to continue to prove that against higher caliber opponents, whatever level of improvement there may be with their defense, because I don't think they're top 5 like they're sitting at post All-Star break right now, obviously. But he's been ridiculous. And the way that he has created, he's a defensive player, but the way he's created offensive possessions by forcing turnovers, I think has been huge for this team. And last night it stood out to me a lot of, I think ball handling is one of his has been one of his weaknesses throughout his career, even going back to Bama. And last night, I thought they had him function as a point guard a little bit more than usual, bringing the ball up the floor, dealing with pressure. It seemed like De'Aaron kind of recognized that a little bit and tried to hound him a bit. And it wasn't always the cleanest, but I think you're starting to see some improvement of the handle and the passing for Keon, which, could be one of the next steps to his game. But I think as of right now, what he provides defensively, turning guys over, just totally mucking up the game. It reminds me back to when the Timberwolves had their 1 seed season and were just not a phenomenal defensive team. I think this is the year before Rudy Gobert ended up getting there, that they were just causing chaos essentially. And I think that Keon does a very good job of doing that while also not putting himself in too many risky scenarios where, if he doesn't get the play, that the whole defensive sequence is screwed. So I think he's been phenomenal on both ends. And that's without even mentioning his ridiculous 3-point shooting.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also the Chris Paul steal was the other one where he picked Chris Paul's pocket. And Sean, before you go, I'm going to point this out. Hey, Alex, 6 of 17 is 35% from the field. You took their primary scorer and you shut him down. So yes, that is locked up. 6 of 17 for Fox. That is getting locked up.
Well, and most of that happened in the third quarter. I think 10 of those points happened in the third quarter. So, but I will say, I mean, like, you're talking about his steals. I mean, I know that gets a lot of the shine. He's got 11 steals in the last 4 games, and like one of those is his career high. One of those games where he had 5. He almost had 5 last night. It's what he does is great. And Brenden, I like that you pointed out some of the things that is like the next to work on, because these are those crucial moments, like without having Malik Monk, who has always been my opinion of being the most important player on this team. And without having Malik Monk, who now has to serve as your primary point guard option, that's where some of the deficiencies that Keon Ellis brings to the floor in terms of being a ball handler, decision maker, playmaker, those kind of things really kind of stand out. I think it's improving for sure, but you really notice where some of those things are happening. And, obviously DeMar DeRozan stepping into that role pretty nicely as a point guard and being a primary ball handler and distributor might slow down a little bit, but it's pretty effective. So I think they found a way to kind of navigate these games where Malik has been out, especially against some pretty quality opponents, or especially against a quality opponent, even though they lost the game against Denver. Like, make no mistake, there's a lot they put on tape that was really encouraging in that game. Yeah, they lost the game and, a better team pulled away, but there's a lot to like, considering some of the things that have hampered this team in this new iteration of how does the ball move? Who are they running through? How does the offense kind of get going? Also defensively, especially being kind of the biggest concern of them all. So I think Keon is at the kind of the forefront of all that and initiating some of this defensive effort, but I think he's bringing it out. I think it's contagious. I think he's so many of these guys that we were criticizing over a week ago in terms of how awful this Kings defense looks and has looked at various points of the season, even in this new group, has quickly risen up the board a bit in terms of what this defensive rating can look like for this team and maybe get them back to middle of the pack. Cause the way they were playing, I didn't think something like that was going to be possible. And it just really shows what they're capable of. Yes, I know some of these oppositions, some of the opponents they've gone up against is lower echelon opposition, but those are your moments to get right. And if you can't get right against some of those teams, how are you going to be able to survive the gauntlet that lies ahead with some of these top tier teams coming through Sacramento here in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Sean, like over the list, I just chose 10 games. I haven't looked at the schedule to see exactly who outside of that 10 game, what the actual, but like their offensive rating over the last 10 games is 121.5 and their defensive rating is 112.8. Like their net rating of plus 8.7 is 6th in the NBA.
Yeah.
Their offensive rating is 4th in the NBA over the last 10 games and their defensive rating is 13th, but they also haven't played anybody. Like you've played Denver and Houston has been struggling. Dallas is a complete train wreck. You played New Orleans 3 times. Like you played a lot of 14-win teams over that stretch. And man, you got to win the games in front of you, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to base all of my offensive rating, defensive rating on a stretch of games that weren't great, because
Right.
in all honesty, like the 8 games before that were like really, really rough, but they're also going through like the De'Aaron Fox upheaval and what that meant. So yeah, I think it's interesting that, we can see the trends that are happening right now. I think the best part about what we're seeing is that they're taking care of bad teams in a very sustainable and quality way. And I know Doug talked about it last night, the quality win. Like, he felt like, hey, that was a professional win last night. There was a lot of emotion. You got off to a rough start, but then you were the best team on the court for the rest of the game. And to me, that's exactly what this team has done. And again, Denver just went through a stretch where they won 9 games in a row, I think. They played nobody in that stretch. And then they came out and they got just blasted by the Lakers right after that stretch to end it, and was like, okay, this is what a real team looks like. But for the Kings, why I think it's different for them is that they're such a new group. You made basically 4 different rotational pieces, like including, one major starter since the All-Star break. So even though you're playing against lesser opponents, you're using those as ways to get better. And especially the lack of practice, I think this is going to be a good stretch for the Kings. And then what happens next, like, who knows? They've got the second most difficult strength to schedule left in the NBA for the rest of the season from here on out, with the Suns having like the most difficult. The Suns have no shot at all. But I think that this stretch of games here, this 10 games or 15 games where they've played a light schedule, is good for a team that's just newly forming and trying to get out there.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be able to catch a rhythm. And I think what you said in there that I agree with probably most is just the way that you're winning these games. Like, it's not always just yes, you're supposed to take care of business against these lower tier opponents. But I mean, we see what the NBA is like on a night to night basis. Things can always, you never know if you're not going to have your best game or if somebody else is going to go off. And it helps when Jordan Clarkson has one of the worst games of his career in those moments and things like that. But the Kings deserve credit for taking care of business in the way that they did, and for them to be convincing wins, even if there's maybe a half quarter stretch in the third for some of these instances where you start to be like, this is getting close. Every time it's gotten there, it hasn't progressed past the point of, okay, now they're fully blowing this. They continue to reestablish their lead and, taking care of business in comfortable fashion, which I think is not something that could have been said about this team all that often in the last few years.
No, I agree. Yeah. Okay, let's if you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll try to get to some of them on the way out the door here.
Where are we going?
What's that?
Where are we going?
I don't know. Well, first of all, let's well, I've got stuff to do. I'm going out to dinner with my beautiful wife.
Where are you going?
So, like, if it was earlier, I was probably going to Josephine's in Auburn.
That was a shot at Sean right there.
Shot at me.
Sean.
Son of a bitch.
Because it's later,
together.
I don't have a reservation, and I've got to try to get a seat at the bar. It's going to be a little more complicated. So yeah, thanks, Sean.
You're welcome. What kind of food they have there?
It's French. It's absolutely incredible, and the drinks are
sounds expensive. Sounds expensive.
It is.
What even is
pricey.
French food?
A croissant.
Well,
you uncultured
but you're
swine.
gonna have that for dinner or what? I love me a good croissant, but
no, like French food
is it croissant or
like,
is it a croissant?
Croissant is how you say that, but but French food is usually like lots of really good sauces, and I don't know. I like it. It's a good spot. The drinks are the best. Absolutely the best. Yeah. So whether I get to go out to dinner there or not this evening may not happen.
You may thank me. I may have saved you some coin there. That sounds like a pricey establishment.
It's a little pricey. Yeah.
Wait, it's in Auburn? You're right next. You're like, how far from that is it? You're not that
20,
far.
15 to 20 to get to.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm above Auburn, so for me to get to like Roseville takes me about like 35.
I like how he says, I'm above Auburn, as if they're like below him in his social status.
No, above them as far as altitude. Altitude, Sean, up the hill. Yeah. Okay, let's get to the one other. Let's just do a check-in. We'll do the
Let's go.
business of basketball. There we go. Let's do a check.
Participation.
Where are you guys feeling that that Jake Laravia is at money-wise at this point? We've got to see Jake. He's had one really good game, but like because I know like Brenden, this is a concern that you had going into this offseason. Like, is he going to play well enough that you can't afford him, right?
Yeah, I think that the range that we're at is what the Kings can offer is probably about fair range. I think I do still like have somewhat of the same concern that it just takes one team to come in there and outprice you. But overall, I mean, as much as they need the forward depth, I think he has been helpful for this team. Funnily enough, I know the irony because the Kings haven't been able to get one of these guys in a long time. He is a somewhat replaceable player.
Yes.
And so I would say that if he does walk, it's far from the end of the world. And again, all it takes is one team. But as of right now, I think the Kings have a decent chance of retaining him. And you would, got to wonder a little bit. It's very situational with each player and how they may feel. But maybe going out and trading for him helps you if another team is offering 1 or 2 million more. For example, you've shown an interest for him. You've got him in your system a little bit if he ends up liking that or anything like that. So yeah, been an up and down experience. I'll say I don't have the most confidence every time he shoots the ball. There's a wide variety of potential outcomes when a shot goes up, it feels like, but the physicality that he brings, I think back to one of the recent episodes, I think it was you, James, that said that he's just like the most Grizzlies player ever. And I can't scrape that from my mind now. I think it's very accurate with just the hustle and also not exactly a shooter at the same time. So yeah, I think that the Kings will have a decent chance, but if you lose him, again, he should be replaceable, even though they've struggled to fill that role for half decade plus.
Yeah, it feels like the Memphis Grizzlies, the way that they're starting to churn out some of these players like this, it's kind of the way that the Spurs used to be. Like, if a Spurs player left, even if they're like a low-level player, like 10 through 15 on the roster, they were all like very sought after because you're like, oh, the Spurs culture type deal. That's what he feels like. It feels like Memphis is kind of going that way where they just have a system where players play for 48 minutes and they play hard. And if they don't play hard, they don't get to play. And it's a good system to have. And it's something that I think small market teams need. And I think it's something that the Kings could really use to like find more players like this or to create a system where that's how you get on the court by playing your ass off the entire time. So we'll throw this up there. Do we think that Laravia is going to get more playing time going forward because he brings more size, shooting, and defense? That's from Edward. What do you guys think, Sean?
No. I mean, he's playing about what you can expect for him to. This is about what his minutes will be. Look, I mean, I like Jake Laravia, but and his energy with the way this team is constructed is sorely needed. But the Kings aren't worried about keeping Jake Laravia with respect. Like whether they keep him or not, like it's not this priority. Certainly, that's not to say they don't like him because they do, but they're going to be thrilled for him if he goes and gets more money because obviously he's a human being at the end of the day. But they have a good confidence that they'll be able to, if they want to keep him, that they can at the money that is that exists for him, that they're pegged and can't really move beyond. So also, if he ends up, being that type of player to where he's going to get more money, that means he would have had a really, really, really solid impact on this team with these remaining games and potential postseason to come. So those are all really, really good things for Jake Laravia.
Yeah,
but I keep saying, like, I mean, the guy's all over the floor, which is great. He totally reminds me of like a deer on roller skates because he can play some haphazard basketball, man.
windshield wiper defense sometimes. Yeah, he to me, I'm still thinking like 3-year, $15 million deal. Like that's what he looks like at this point. I don't think it'll be more than that. Maybe I'm wrong. Like it's possible he gets like a 321 or something, but I don't know. He might not even get 3 and 15. Let's see from NBA Guru Show. He wants to know, what clarity does Sabonis want? Is he concerned with us just being a borderline 8th seed, or is he curious on how many older guys we have?
Well, you're the guru, bro. Tell us.
Yeah, bro.
NBA guru. No, I'm playing.
It's okay. That's NBA.
No,
It's
I'm just
usually
playing.
NBA guru Zach, but now he's decided to have his own show.
He's got his own show. I want to tune in. I want to listen to it. What was the question? Sorry, what was about Domas? What was it?
Yeah, it's like, hey, what exactly is he concerned with? I think, to be honest with you, he's concerned with wasting his prime in a situation where they may or may not make the playoffs. It's the same exact concerns that De'Aaron Fox had. He didn't want to waste his prime, and not only that, but very concerned about the instability of the franchise and the chaos behind the scenes.
Yeah, let's just put it this way. Like, De'Aaron Fox's concerns about committing long-term to a team like Sacramento, again, not exclusive to De'Aaron Fox. Like, all kinds of guys have that concern. They're all worried about their careers, their longevity, success, their legacies, but to various degrees of that. Like, sometimes I think you can understand this, like, they have their own concerns, but they have people around them. They are their own brand. They have, to stand out in the league. I mean, let's put it this way. We talk about all the time. Jonas Valanăiūnas does it in Sacramento and Indiana, what he has done, and he's had a great career, and he's probably a borderline Hall of Famer potentially at the end of the season. If he was doing this in a huge market and they had like New York, you would always hear him talked about all the time on national shows, and his stuff would be everywhere. And I'm not saying that Domas is necessarily concerned with that type of thing, but he has a team of people and marketing and agents and all those type of opportunities that go along with it. And to be able to maximize this small window in the league, you need to have success. So there are all kinds of players throughout that locker room that everyone exists in a day-to-day culture. They don't really look beyond the season at hand or the days at hand or the game that's right in front of them. And when you're in the off season, that's when you start thinking about some of those things. Okay, what does this look like? What are we putting around us? And when you don't have that success, and unfortunately for the Kings, they haven't, that tends to carry with you. I mean, how many times have you seen a Kings player? And I'm not saying this is De'Aaron Fox or Domantas Sabonis or anybody else, but like, you see a Kings player on the Kings, and a year or two later, they're not even playing in the league. Right?
Yeah.
Like, think about that. So these are all things that factor into those equations. And that's why you have people in place to be able to take care of these things for you. Domantas Sabonis, as much as he'll tell you he's fine with not being an all-star because of, the time away from the game, being able to rest and recover, think about the broad season ahead. That is one mentality, and that is an honest mentality. Now, if you're his agent or you're his person who's worried about the best in his career, you're absolutely pissed off that he wasn't an all-star, because it takes away opportunities and things for his own legacy and sustainability and things going forward. So you look at that, how hard you put up these type of numbers in Sacramento, and you can't get an all-star appearance. You can't get these type of recognition. So, and I'm using just Domas as an example. That exists in lower level tier guys and the highest tier of guys. So it's that's some of the concerns, and hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, I think another aspect is, like, I think even between us, there's like uncertainty on what sort of change will take place this offseason, but I think that there's a feeling that there will be some change, whatever that may look like. And that probably is a question for Domas as well. I think somebody pointed out to me yesterday, it may have been you, Sean, actually, I forget, but that essentially it might not have been, that, like, De'Aaron really tied himself to Mike Brown, and obviously that was sort of the final straw for De'Aaron Fox. I can't help but wonder a little bit, like, how much Domas is tied to Doug Christie in this scenario. It was very much his guy, like we outlined a little bit earlier. He still has the interim title. Does Domas's, potential uncertainties have to do with, hey, is Doug going to be the guy, or does he want influence on some of those decisions potentially? So I think Sean laid it out all well, but also that there's just a lot of question marks about like what changes are going to be made this offseason with this team. And as a player that's directly involved in that, I think that would, be something that you're obviously monitoring very closely for what that may mean for your future.
Yeah, I think the Domas Doug relationship, like they are very close. But I also like Domas has been around the game since he was a little kid, and so he gets it. Like I'd also say that the Doug is pretty tied in. Whether
Doug?
it's Doug is tied in with ownership and with people around ownership as much as he is with Monty and Wes. Like Doug is a Sacramento King. He's
More
not
so.
he's not necessarily a Monty or Wes guy or a I guess you could say Vlade guy, but like just going back like he's a Sacramento Kings guy and more than anything else. And so I think that like retaining Doug would probably be a good thing for Domas, but Domas is going to want assurances that you actually have a 6'8", 6'9" guy next to him that can play basketball. And, again, the Kings have free agents like Trey Lyles and Jake Laravia and, name that sort of guy at the back end of the bench. But they could have holes in this roster moving forward. And he's going to want assurances that they're doing the right things. Someone mentioned to me last night that the Kings after last night's game are 8-3 with Jake Laravia. And, again, we can talk about schedule and everything else, but that Memphis is 4-8 since Jake Laravia got traded. And so, like, while he isn't like an end all be all guy, he is a guy that actually does impact some things and does some good things for winning. Let's see what else we got. I see the players coach. Let's see.
A lot of questions.
Yeah, Jim Thurlkill. What do you think, Doug Christie, and the fact that he seems to be a player's coach and he's winning will affect the team and people wanting to stay, and he will make this a positive place. Look, Doug is doing an incredible job. We talked about earlier, 20-11 as the head coach of the Kings, and not just the head coach, but they had lost 5 in a row when he took over the job, and then one of his 11 losses are that game where all kinds of hell breaks loose and they fire Mike on the way to the airport. And then on top of that, they traded De'Aaron Fox and had a bunch of weirdness before they traded De'Aaron Fox, which cost them a couple of wins. So I think Doug has done a great job, and and I think he's done enough to get the interim tag pulled. Whether that happens or not, like, we don't know, but I'm going to say it's leaning more that way than him not getting the job. Right? Am I off base with that?
I mean, if I'm a betting man, I think Doug keeps it, but I think a lot of it, there's going to be a lot of decisions that are made at the end of the season. The minute the Kings stop playing basketball and their season is done, there's going to be a lot of conversations and decisions to be made. And I think who the head coach is going to be one of them. So you got to get to that point. And I think a lot of it, we're talking about how things could feel now. What are they, 21-11 with Doug, 21-10 with Doug at this moment?
20-11 with Doug.
20-11. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's all well and good. Where do you get in the postseason? Where do you go at that point? I think that's going to be certainly the bulk of the analysis of and some of the thought process that goes into it, but also what are the decisions you're going to do with the roster? And I think, having this roster with Doug, maybe you're thinking other pieces and looking at it with Doug, and also who's available in the coaching market also tends to impact some of those decisions. So I think it's just far too early, but so far so good. I mean, Doug is checking all the boxes. He's got this team competing. They're entertaining to watch, at least in my opinion. I know there's some people that don't think that they're entertaining to watch, but however you look at it, I think they're a competitive product, and we do have a bunch of small sample sizes because we've certainly seen when they look look terrible. We've seen things when they look really great. So hopefully that's building to something. Certainly they've had enough games now to where I feel like, despite not having a wealth of practice time or even a training camp, I think you have enough stuff on film with a professional bunch of basketball players with a ton of talent, a pretty deep roster who can go out there and you can kind of see who they are right now. So I think these next probably 10 games, that might be too many, really, maybe 5 games, I think is really going to be indicative of what this product will be and how they finish out the season.
Yeah, and I think to your point, how teams end a season is obviously what a lot of the offseason ends up being relative to. I think honestly teams overreact to how their season ends a lot of times. But sometimes it's fitting. And one of the other things you have to figure out this offseason is, are you retaining this front office? Are you keeping around both Monty and Wes? Are you letting go of one of them? And if you let go of both and you bring a new guy in, I thought a big part of the issue when Sacramento was in there, what is 17-year playoff drought, 16 season, 17-year, was that the front office and coaching staff didn't seem to be lined up very often. It was a front office guy coming in and it's like, hey, this is going to be your head coach. You don't quite get to pick. And then eventually that guy gets let go. They hire their new coach, and the new front office guy is out before that coach's contract up, and you start the process all over again. And so I think part of the complication with Doug is who is even going to be the front office guys making that decision, if it even is them. As you guys pointed earlier, Doug seems closer connected to even higher up than that, obviously, with ownership of this team. So I think there's a lot of complicated factors, but I think it definitely points towards Doug probably retaining the job right now. And as you guys said, he's done a phenomenal job so far. I think getting these guys to mesh with all the complicated circumstances and just sort of the circus that these last 2 months or so has been surrounding this team. He's done a great job and deserves it. But I think there's just a lot of moving pieces that make it a little bit of a complicated situation to figure out.
And to that point, Brenden, too, I think just someone who might be listening to this, it's like, that's a fair point. But let me give you another example too. If ownership, as James laid out, the connection there with Doug, and obviously the having that type of admiration of Doug and his abilities and what he can be as a head coach, should they make the decision to give Doug full control of head coaching, give him a contract going forward, and then in that scenario, let's say they do make a front office change, go in a different direction with GM. Well, you're hiring a GM who's coming in knowing they're going to have Doug Christie. They have to be okay with that. That's part of taking over the gig. And I sometimes feel that gets a little bit too much credit in the sense of, oh, well, they hired a coach for the GM, they did it wrong. Certainly in the perfect blueprint, you'd want everybody to the ownership, front office, GM, they go hire their head coach. No doubt that's the blueprint, but it can also, they have to be comfortable with that scenario stepping into the role, whether it be, someone that's already in-house or going outward and saying, all right, someone like Scott Perry, for an example, because he was here and Kings fans are familiar with Scott Perry before he left for the Knicks and now he's available. So something like that in a scenario, if Scott Perry was coming in and replacing, say, Monty McNair, then he would have to be totally comfortable with having Doug Christie as his head coach. And I don't think there's many GMs that would, balk at the job because of who with Doug Christie as their head coach.
I would say the other side of that, and I agree with what you're saying, is just as long as the guy isn't coming in and thinking, all right, this is fine, he's only going to last so long anyways.
Right.
Well, that's the trick, man. Everyone says yes to the job because there's only 30 of them. And once you say yes to the job, then a year down the road, you go and make your move and bring in the coach you want to bring in. So, I mean, that's typically how this goes. It's just like the Kings do it backwards like so many times. I mean, this is Michael Malone was hired and then Pete D'Alessandro. And Michael Malone was not ever Pete D'Alessandro's guy at all. And he fired him as quickly as he could and did scorched earth to get to that point as well.
Mm-hmm.
You just keep fast forwarding and you have the same exact issues again and again. Again, Vlade interviewed 8 dudes and a bunch of them like 3 times. Dave Yeager became available on a Friday and he was hired as a coach the next day. And again, that was not Vlade's first choice. That was somebody else's choice. Then when he did get an opportunity to hire a coach, he went out as quickly as possible and hired Luke. Of course, Luke's contract lasted way longer than Vlade did. And, Monty inherited a year and a half of Luke Walton. So it's just,
Vlade also wanted Luke Walton before he went to LA, and that wasn't going to happen because LA, that street was paved in gold to go from the Warriors to LA, but that was Vlade's guy. He wanted Luke Walton.
Yep. So, let's see. Do we have any other? Lizzie did ask a question. If the Kings get a new GM, the power dynamics are still bad in the front office. I'm going to clarify. I don't think the power dynamics are bad in the front office as much as like what I said this week. Like, we keep hearing this, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? And to be like, my qualifier was it's more like a culinary school where you got a couple of cooks and then you got a bunch of people who think they're cooks and are trying to be cooks, and they burn stuff and they screw stuff up all the time. And so, like,
a James analogy, I love these.
There are a lot of people who think they're cooks in that kitchen, and it's always going to be a mess. So I don't honestly.
Who's the sous chef?
Well, that's the problem. The sous chef is probably who everyone thinks is the head chef, and the head chef is maybe the sous chef. But then you have this problem that all of these other people, they don't have a strict job like they should in a kitchen, and they also don't say yes, chef, every time the chef turns around and asks a question. They all have their own agendas, and they're all out there making some other food that's not what's supposed to be on the menu, and you're like, what is happening? So I don't even think it's a front office thing as much as it is an organizational thing, where there are a bunch of people who have a say in what happens that takes away from the overall power of the one person that should be making the decisions. And I don't know that dynamic is ever going to change. So
when Mike Brown got the job, he talked about, I may have mentioned this before, but changing the culture and the importance of having a horizontal and vertical alignment within the organization. And that's crossed my mind a lot because I don't feel like this org very much has that going on.
Yeah.
In restaurants, it's kind of weird. Like the host is usually up front, but then you have someone who takes your table. Hey, I'll be over. Everyone else, the server, everyone, they don't even bring you your food. You know what I mean? Like that just seems like a
still part of the analogy, or is this
no?
Just...
Well, I was going to bring it to the analogy because I was like, it seems like such a wasted position.
Care to share who the wasted position is?
No, because I was going to say, like, who do you think that? I was like, in this scenario, who that might be, but
the host, host is a wasted. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so you walk in the door, you got the lady at the door or the guy at the door, and that's technically the host, right?
Yeah.
Then you get technically your waiter, but your waiter just takes your order, right? And then they come in and check on you. You get a server, you get all these people bringing your drinks. They're all different people.
Expediter, food expediter. You have your bus boy who fills up your water.
Well, the busboy doesn't do that. The busboy cleans your table. They take your empty plates away. Right?
They walk around with water and they fill up water. That's not typically your server. Yeah, but
you ever worked in a restaurant, Sean?
But again,
no, I did.
Sean, I think one of the keys is that in that situation, everybody has a role. Right. And they play to their strengths. And the reason why you need a host...
My point is, I think there's a lot of, even in your crazy analogy that you have, which is always crazy, but not so crazy in this regard. I do think there are pieces that are not necessary to the enjoyment of the product.
Okay. Yeah, look, the reason why you have a host is to make sure that the tables are distributed evenly. Right? Brenden knows what I'm talking about. He's been a server. It's so one server doesn't have 14 tables and another server has 3 tables.
I like the ones that try to take your order and don't write it down.
I hate that.
Oh yeah?
It's fine. Can't... They're usually pretty good. They get it right more times.
You seem like that type of guy, actually, James. You have that memory. I do not trust myself because I'll do that. I've tried to do it before, and then I go walk to the POS station, and somebody else stops me and needs something else on my walk over, and then I get there, and I'm like, what the hell did they order?
For the record,
Yeah.
POS, you meant point of sale and not piece of shit, right?
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for clarifying.
Let's get towards the end of this show.
Let's.
Number one, if you're still watching, we love you. We have like 214 people in here. If you don't mind, hit the thumbs up button for us, subscribe to the channel, do all that stuff. That would be really cool. But we have the little bit of news that came out yesterday. It's actually been lingering for like 3 or 4 weeks. But Loucks has coached his last game as an assistant for the Sacramento Kings. He's on his way to Florida State to take over for Leonard Hamilton, who has been there since I think 2002, and who is 76 years old and stepping away from coaching NBA basketball. Luke is, of course, the Kings defensive coordinator. What are you guys' thoughts here? Because, again, this was De'Aaron Fox guy. He's also a Mike Brown guy. But I think we all like Luke. He's a really good dude, and we've got to know him pretty well over the last 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. I've enjoyed being around Luke. Got to talk to him a little bit yesterday. He's super excited about the job, but obviously got to get to things pretty quickly with recruiting and all that goes into being a part of college sports and jumping into that world. But as you pointed out, I mean, he was really close with De'Aaron Fox. I think De'Aaron joked about, we're going to have to go work out in Florida this offseason, I guess, and obviously very close to Mike Brown. So it felt like it was inevitable that at the end of this offseason, it was probably the end of Luke's time in Sacramento anyways. Doing that midseason, I think obviously isn't the most ideal scenario for the team, but he got an opportunity that obviously his alma mater and a great opportunity for him that, you would never turn down. So happy for Luke. I think it, we'll see how much it really changes for the Kings. Guys will have different responsibilities, obviously, who's assigned to what, and being the defensive coordinator, if somebody else will get a temporary promotion into that role, I guess we'll kind of see. But more than anything, I mean, I think I'm just kind of happy for Luke. He's been a good guy to be around and communicate with a handful of times. So yeah, it's cool that he gets to go back to his alma mater. I'm curious if he's going to be able to try to pry Dolkeys away from Jordy's staff, another guy from FSU that was previously on Sacramento's staff there and then went to Brooklyn with Jordy. So yeah, happy for Luke. I think it's a good opportunity for him. And I think that his time in Sacramento was coming to an end anyways this offseason. And it's another layer of everything that we talked about earlier is you don't know how much of this coaching staff is going to change beyond Doug if Doug does stay.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's not paying attention, like Mike Brown was put in a position to where he was going to have to fire Luke Loucks or another member of his coaching staff. And so, you've got a head coaching change. They're trying to make the best of what they have. Anyone that thinks that Luke Loucks is quitting on the Kings, it's like, well, no, it's kind of already gone that way. So he's got to get it. He has a gig now. It's a upgrade. He's now a head coach at his alma mater, as Brenden pointed out. He played, not only did he play there, I mean, he's replacing kind of a legend, and wish him well. This is what staffs do. This is what you want to show, is that guys can leave here and go on to succeed, or if they're not able to take over a position here in Sacramento. And I think that's great for him. I'm happy for him. It'll be interesting. I know there's a lot of people who moves up the bench, right? Like they're trying to make them the best of what they have. No one's coming in until end of the season, if and when Doug is hired or somebody else is hired. So, in my opinion, everyone just kind of moves up a role. I think Jawad Williams takes a little bit more of a active role. Jim Moran will take a little bit more of an active role, and I think it's basically between those two guys. But that'll be a decision that Doug has to make. I tried to ask him before the game on record about it, and he pivoted and said, "Oh, we'll have to talk about that in the coming days." So, yeah, good for him. Wish him all the success out there, except against Duke. And that's all you guys say.
He's from Stillwater, Florida. That's his hometown, Luke, and he met his wife at Florida State. Like, they're Florida people, and so this is a great move for him. And like Brenden said, he likely would not have been back next season with the Kings. And look, I think it does speak volumes about the group of coaches that Mike assembled originally for the 2022-23 season. Jordy has got a head coaching job. Luke now has a head coaching job. And I know it's in a weird roundabout way, but Doug Christie also has a head coaching job,
Right.
and he's found success, and that means that you probably had a pretty good staff. Yeah. So
And it's important too, like you mentioned, James, like whether Doug is your head coach going forward or not, that coaching staff will look dramatically different.
yeah, totally. Like Doug is going to want his own staff if he's the head coach. I mean, and people should know that NBA head coaches, they get to hire their own staff. That's not, they have a budget, and that sometimes can be an issue. But somebody asked, is Doug a defensive minded head coach? Doug's going to need to surround himself with good people if he's a head coach.
He'll need a head
Doug.
coaching. He'll need a coach of head coaching caliber. I mean, obviously Jay Triano checks that box, but he will need probably 2 of them on his staff.
Well, and Luke wasn't a defensive-minded coach. He was asked to be a defensive-minded coach this year. He was always an offensive-minded coach, and it was kind of a weird fit that Mike decided to do at the beginning of the season. Doug is a guy who has done the scouting reports for this team, a lot of the scouting reports coming into this year, and a lot of their big wins came in Doug Christie's scouts. So, he had done a good job of learning that side of it. All right. I think that's going to do it. What do we got for final thoughts?
I'll just go ahead and say that I have nothing today. I am ready
do.
to.
You don't have a light either.
For the
Look
rest
at
of the day,
you.
I'm going to watch this Charles Manson Netflix documentary probably for the rest of my day. Got a couple little errands I'm going to run and things like that. But yeah, nothing crazy. I am very much taking the day today.
Did you ever see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I did not.
Of course not.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened to that list of movies. It's somewhere in my room.
Oh man,
that you're not in anymore. Did you leave it in the room that you moved from?
He wrote it on the wall and just left it there.
Yeah,
someone had to paint over it.
Yeah,
Brendan's room kind of looks like how this room looked before I figured out what was wrong with my camera and my laptop.
I have moved so much the last few years that I don't even decorate the walls right now until I feel like I'm going to be at a place for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. I can relate. There's nothing going on back here. Haven't figured out.
You guys keep moving. I ain't ever moving. Yeah.
Well, yeah, none of us live behind the pearly gates of a freaking, an absolute billionaire's pad.
I would love to record from my library in my bar.
Yeah. Or from one of my many boats. Your fleet, the Ham Navy.
That's right.
We hadn't done a podcast since the Oscars happened. I was thrilled that Enora won. I've been on that forever.
You have been on the Enora thing forever. Yeah.
It's not for everyone. I get it. Like it can be a little bit of a risque movie, but and you know what? We got a little bit of a breaking news here. So I guess since I've got the mic, I'll just do it. Malik Monk advancing on his return to play, cleared for on-court activity, completed an individual workout today, and he's going to be listed as out against the Clippers, but we'll see how that goes. And Jonas Valanăiūnas also cleared for on-court activity. He'll be out for the next 2 games, reevaluated on Tuesday.
The Jonas Valanăiūnas thing makes a lot of sense because the Kings don't play. They have the back-to-back, but then they don't play again until Thursday. Yeah, that's pretty substantial. Oh, I'm glad we fit that in. Let's tweet.
It screwed up my praise for Enora, but I was happy to see that. If you haven't seen it, I'd like to know what your thoughts were. I know I told Brendan. Brendan actually went and saw it. Right?
I did.
As he drops the mic.
I thought it was good. It was a little all over the place, and
you don't know art.
I liked it. My girlfriend didn't love it.
She didn't?
She did not love it.
No.
Yeah, that's why I haven't watched it. I'm slightly concerned about watching it with my wife and going like, yeah, she's not going to be into it.
Don't watch it with your child. That's your wife. Don't watch it with your kids. It's not that type of movie. Again, a little bit more of an adult Pretty Woman.
One's 21, one's 17.
They can figure it out. Like a little bit more of an adult Pretty Woman, but also kind of like an Uncut Gems with the anxious type of moments that they have. And I would say if you like Mikey Madison in that movie, I had mentioned Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's where Sean Baker, the writer and the director of the movie, discovered her. She plays one of the Manson girls in that movie. So,
so
that was the tie there, Brendan, because you want to watch a Charles Manson documentary that I didn't even know was on Netflix. So
I didn't know he was like an artist, like a musician.
Yeah, him
They
and
were tying him in
Brian
with
Wilson
the
of the
Beach
Beach Boys,
Boys
yeah.
or something like that. Yeah.
Or is it Carl Wilson, right?
I honestly do not remember which one.
Can't remember.
I'm about to start it today.
All right. Not a huge Charles Manson fan. He did
Fair
like he visited my grandma's neighbor year in during the late 60s, early 70s, before he was imprisoned. He was part of a biker gang that stopped by my grandma's neighbor's son, like a little rough around the edges, and so yeah.
What does visited mean?
Like he was across the street from my grandma's house, like hanging out with a
Oh.
bunch of bikers one day. Yeah. So yeah,
Interesting.
weird stuff. Yeah, if you get into that one, that's pretty dark stuff there, Brendan. Okay, let's see. Final thoughts for me. Kings have a game on Sunday. They've got a game on Monday. Clearly, it looks like no Domas in either one of those. What did it say, Malik Monk? It will be out tomorrow. Is that what it said? But possible for Monday.
And Domas will be out the next two, so he won't be against the Knicks.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's see. Outside of that, I do have a GoFundMe. One of my cousins.
You don't need the money. Oh, I'm sorry.
Has nothing to do with me. One of my cousins is his wife is huge in the Elk Grove community and does all kinds of stuff with the Elk Grove football program. And she had a massive stroke. And it's gonna be a long road back. So if you guys are GoFundMe people, I'll drop it in the YouTube description. But a really good lady who's really big in the Elk Grove community. Her name is Jennifer Grant, and she's going to be in the hospital for a long time. And she's had some miraculous things happen, and she's on the mend, which is incredible. So outside of that, what else do we got? We good?
I didn't see any other questions come in, did we?
Well, there's a bunch of questions that came in, but they're way late. And
no, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think I need to leave and go out to dinner with my wife. And you guys, Sean's going to try to drag this out for another 30 minutes.
That's not my fault. I don't do that.
Yes, you do. All right. Thanks for tuning in. If you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. That would be amazing. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber. So you get everything sent right to your inbox and all that stuff. Thanks for tuning into the Kings Beat podcast. So for Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you very soon.